Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable Season Preview Edition. We're up to the Seattle Kraken in our rotation here as we keep going through the NHL teams. I'm joined by Adam Kierszenblat. He covers the Kraken here at the Hockey Writers. Adam, how's it going?
It's going good. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, for sure. The Kraken, really good season last year. They beat out the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, very surprisingly, and even brought the Dallas Stars to a pretty good run for their money as well. So, by all accounts, really good season. Their depth basically brought them forward throughout the whole season with offense and lost a few pieces in the offseason, added a couple. But let's get started with that and get started with the forwards and start talking about a couple of new additions. We'll start with Kailer Yamamoto because this guy's really young still. He's only 24 years old. Very quick forward. He's small, 5'8", but coming in from the Edmonton Oilers, what do you expect him to bring to the Kraken going forward this season?
Well, Kailer Yamamoto is a great player. This guy is really good on the penalty kill. He's going to be in that bottom six on the Kraken this year. People may not remember, but he actually played in Spokane during his WHL career. So he does have experience playing, in Washington State. He knows Seattle pretty well. He put up some pretty good numbers every time he came through Seattle in the WHL. But yeah, this was a move because the Kraken finished with a 76.7% penalty kill last year. So this is really an opportunity for them to bring in those depth guys, make some more competition in the lineup because they didn't really lose a lot of players. And hopefully the idea is that if you bring in a guy like Kailer Yamamoto, you don't necessarily have to play your top end players on the penalty kill as often. So it's kind of one of these, it might not look like a massive move, but in the end, when the players are getting tired, when there's injuries, this is one of those moves that's really going to pay off for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, and it's a low risk move too. I mean, well, really the only thing you can get is good from this guy, and if he hits, he's another great piece to this team, right? So they also added Pierre-Édouard Bellemare on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's 38 years old. He's quite a bit older, but he's still very useful piece. He's been useful in everywhere he's played with the Tampa Bay Lightning most recently. What do you like with him coming into the lineup? He's another like penalty killer as well.
Well, I think Pierre-Édouard Bellemare was brought in because they lost Morgan Geekie, and they really wanted to make that bottom six really difficult to play against. This shutdown group, and Pierre-Édouard Bellemare kind of fits that mold better than Morgan Geekie does, who was great for the Kraken for the last couple of years. But it's kind of like a change in philosophy a little bit. This is another player that's going to really help on the penalty kill. If he's not going to get 30 points, but he could get in that 15 range. And I do think that Pierre-Édouard Bellemare was brought in as kind of like a safety valve in case Shane Wright doesn't work out this year, which is very possible. There's lots of questions around Shane Wright, which we could talk about a little bit later. But I think that's kind of like opportunity to solidify the lineup in case for whatever reason Shane Wright doesn't make that team. Then at least you're not scrambling to find that fourth line center.
For sure. And like you say, he's also a character guy too in the locker room. So that lot of experience with different teams as well. So very good. Maybe an underrated addition to the team too. Okay, well, let's move to the rest of the offense and still led by Jared McCann, Matthew Beniers, Jordan Eberle, those guys. Do you have any big storylines you're kind of watching with this offense? You mentioned Shane Wright. What are you kind of worried about or going into this season, or are you worried about anything?
Well, this year is going to be really interesting because if people might not remember this, but Andre Burakovsky, one of their big signings this offseason, didn't play for the end of the last half of the end of the season. So you're essentially getting a top six forward back into your lineup for free. We're gonna see how that line of Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand, and Eeli Tolvanen, if that can continue to be one of the best third lines in hockey. And there's a massive logjam here with the forward groups. Once you bring in Burakovsky, who drops out? I know that they did lose Daniel Sprong, but he was a fourth liner. He's not
Mhm.
like a first liner. So you basically have a situation where you have guys like Jared McCann, Matty Beniers, Jane Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, Andrew Burakovsky, and Alex Wenberg, and there's not enough spaces in the top six for all of them in the end. And so we'll kind of see how this works out. I'm really curious to see what type of play a guy like Brandon Tanev can do, because we've seen him continually, produce. He had 16 goals last year. I'm really curious to see if James Schwartz can stay healthy, because he had over 20 goals last year, even though he missed 11 games in the season. And I'm just interested if Matty Beniers, like what type of step he's going to take, because remember, this is a massive season for Matty Beniers, because he signed his ELC the season prior to last season. It means that he can that the Kraken are going to have to sign him at the end of this year, basically. So if Matty Beniers puts up, or they'll have an opportunity to sign him, they won't have to sign him because he still will have 1 year left. Or no, they will have to sign him at the end of the year. So if he puts up 70 points in that 65, 70 points, what type of contract are we looking at? Is he going to sign one of these 8-year contracts worth $9 million? And how does that affect the internal cap that the Kraken have? Because right now they don't really have, a superstar that's making $8, $9, $10 million on the cap. So Matty, like what's Matty Beniers going to do for the encore? And the biggest question is, can Jared McCann score 40 goals? Or what is going to happen, because Jared McCann's like another guy who could play in the top six, but has generally done better with next to guys like Yanni Gourde on the third line. But now you have Bjorkstrand and Tolvanen who's working well. So there's going to be a lot of interesting questions coming out of the Kraken during training camp in response to their forward group.
Lots of options, with Shane Wright there too, and lots of interesting things to kind of watch during training camps. But with the forwards. All right, moving on to the defense, they did lose Carson Soucy to free agency to Vancouver Canucks. They brought in Brian Dumoulin as the new addition. Do you see him as a replacement to Soucy, or is he a downgrade? What do you see Dumoulin coming in with?
Well, they're different players, obviously. Dumoulin is a little bit older. I think he's going to bring that veteran experience. He has some history with playing with guys like Jamie Alexiak and Justin Schultz. So we'll see if that combination works. But outside of their first pair, which is Adam Larsson and Vince Dunn, there's a lot of questions on how they're going to kind of build their defensive group. They signed Connor Carrick. That's a guy who I don't think that they're going to try to send through waivers. You already have Fleury there, Cale Fleury there. On top of that, you also have I'm blanking. Jacob Megna, who's in the 6'6", 220-pound range. So right now they have maybe 9, and if you want to include Riker Evans, maybe 10 defensemen that could theoretically make the opening night roster. And when we're talking about development and a guy like Riker Evans, I don't know if Riker Evans looks like he's ready to potentially get at least third line minutes in the NHL. But by them signing Dumoulin, by them signing Megna, by them signing Carrick and having Fleury there, it's kind of blocked him. So I'm really curious to see how this defense shapes up. And I think that it might be a missed opportunity for them not go, even though signing Brian Dumoulin is a good, solid move. I think it's a missed opportunity because you could have gotten that opportunity to bring Riker Evans up, and you have enough NHL defensemen kind of around that if he struggles, you can always send it back down to the AHL or without massive issues. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Evans had a good playoffs too, so that was interesting that they kind of blocked him by adding a couple different guys. So we'll see. He's just going to have to work hard, or maybe beat out one of these guys and force that waiver thing, right? So,
well, it's interesting because, I was looking at this. So Riker Evans plays on the right side. So you got Vince Dunn at $7.3 million. And then you have Jamie Alexiak at $4.6 million. And then Brian Dumoulin at 3.1 on your left side. So
yeah,
I don't see a scenario where he beats out any of those guys.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, like the only option is really on the right side. But that's Will Borgen's spot. Like Will Borgen is going to be on this team. He showed last year that he deserves to be on this team. So it's like like I said, unless there's an injury and multiple injuries at that, and in that case, they've kind of blocked him, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see what happens throughout training camp, or how he plays in preseason and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's hard to imagine any of these guys going away, right? All right, goaltending, and this one didn't change. They still got their three goalies: Philip Grubauer, Joey Daccord, and Chris Driedger. Do you see that being? I mean, Grubauer had an up and down season. He was pretty good in the playoffs. Looked like the goalie they want. What do you see this tandem kind of shaking out for this season?
Well, this is where, and we'll talk about trades a little bit later, but this is where the biggest question mark around potential trades relies, because they signed Joey Daccord to a 1-year deal. They have Chris Driedger, 1-year deal, Philip Grubauer, 1-year deal. So I don't think they want to lose Joey Daccord off waivers. But this is really dependent on how healthy Chris Driedger is, how ready he is for the start of the season, and how the Kraken kind of want to maneuver this. Like I said, Joey Daccord, they're very happy with. I don't see them trying to trade him because they just signed him. Philip Grubauer is virtually untradeable because of his contract and everything like that. And that leaves Joey Daccord. But do you want to are they comfortable enough with having Philip Grubauer and Joey Daccord as a 1-2? But who knows? Maybe Chris Driedger somehow slips through waivers. But yeah, it will be interesting to see, because they're not there. There is very little chance that they're entering the season with 3 goaltenders on the roster.
Yeah, it's because you're looking at Driedger. He's 3.5 million too. I mean, that's a big number to have sitting wherever. I mean, that's pretty big. And Daccord's 27, so he's still in that range where he probably would be plucked off waivers pretty easily. So yeah, especially, that's a tough.
And remember, Joey Daccord was fantastic for them all the way up to Game 7 of the Calder Cup, and even in Game 7. So, goaltending is a tricky game, but Joey Daccord definitely deserves his opportunity.
For sure. We'll see how they'll say. Another big storyline to watch during training camp. Okay, now we talk about the 3 position groups. The specific division is interesting one. You've got the Kraken made it in the wild card spot, almost made it into that. They were hanging around that division, 3rd division spot as well. How do they stack up in it now? I mean, some of the teams have improved. I mean, the Vancouver Canucks may arguably kind of improved as well. You got, of course, the Edmonton Oilers still on top. LA Kings added Pierre-Luc Dubois to their roster. Where do you see them in this division and the conference right now?
Well, I kind of see the Pacific Division in like 4 tiers. So you have Edmonton and Vegas, who are at the top. And I think most people can agree with that. And then you have this like kind of 3rd tier of LA, Vancouver, and Seattle. Like that's going to be probably the fight for who makes the playoffs as the 3rd seed and the wild card, and who misses out. Then you have the Calgary Flames that are just kind of there. I have no idea how to project the Calgary Flames. I know that some people think that, they're ahead of the Kraken and the Canucks, but I mean, like that team is going to be something to watch this year, because there is just so much going on, and who knows who's going to stay and who's going to go. And then you have, Anaheim and San Jose, and they're in the bottom. And I think that most people can agree with that. So I think that if you're looking at the Seattle Kraken and the projection, I think that either 3rd or the wild card spot is a good projection. They could miss the playoffs, but I think that they're strong enough that they're not going to miss the playoffs, because they have this team. They don't have superstars. Like, even though Jared McCann scored 40, Matty Beniers won the Calder, Vince Dunn is putting up, close to 60 points. They don't have that designated superstar just yet, but they play a very good team game that they can take down the Colorados of the world, that they can win, potentially not win the division, but really compete for the division. So we'll see kind of how it shakes out in the end. But I think that a lot of people are underestimating what the Seattle Kraken can do, even after they showed last season.
They still have a lot of depth, and that's the biggest thing. I think and that's how they won a lot of their games. A bunch of different guys scoring in different spots, like Daniel Sprong with his 20 goals on the fourth line, right? So you got, and Kailer Yamamoto can definitely potentially do that too, right? So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to watch that division this year. Hey, our quick fire round, and these are all fun questions I like throwing at you. So let's start with our 1 or 2 breakout stars for the Kraken this season.
I'm gonna go with Eeli Tolvanen, 27 points in 48 games last year with Seattle and Nashville. So I think that he's gonna hit 20 goals. I think that he's gonna establish himself as one of the top third line players in the league, and I could see him pushing that 40-point mark.
Yeah, what a waiver pickup that was.
Yes.
All right, one player that needs to bounce back this season.
It's kind of hard to really pick a player because everybody kind of did well, but I think that we're at the point where Alex Wennberg has to be putting up more than 40 points. 38 points in 82 games. I think that he's a guy to watch, and for the money that they're paying him, I think it's time that he starts producing like a top 6 forward.
Yeah, that's a good choice for sure. All right, something that could be an X factor this season. It doesn't have to be a player. It can be a situation like the power play or coaching or something like that.
Well, for me, yeah, it's probably it's kind of hard to really like this Kraken team is so weirdly designed because it's like they don't really have holes, but I think it's more just living up to expectation is the X factor here, because now not many people had expectations going into last season. They were like, okay, you know what, if the Kraken missed the playoffs and they get a shot at Bedard, I think people will understand. But now that they made the playoffs, this Seattle Kraken fan base is like, okay, now that you've made it, you got to make it again. We can't go backwards, especially that, you know, this, if you were going to take us, if you were not going to make the playoffs, this last year was the one because of how deep the draft was. But I think that there's going to be so much pressure on this team that they need to make the playoffs, especially when you watch at how the Mariners are doing right now. There is a buzz in the city around the sports around sports, and you look at how the Thunderbirds did last year, making it all the way to Memorial Cup. So Seattle is a tough city to play in. I can tell you that from players. Multiple players have talked about how passionate the fan base is and how they don't want to let this fan base down. So I think it's just living up to expectation and making the playoffs and I wouldn't say going far, but I mean, you won a round last year. I think that's kind of where the expectation is again this year.
Yeah, it's that agreed. I mean, I think that's a big one. I mean, like you said, if they would have lost, missed the playoffs, got another big high draft pick, be like, yeah, it's fine. But making the playoffs adds a lot to your expectations for sure. Okay, a rookie or a prospect that could surprise and make the roster out of training camp.
I think it has to be Ty Cartier because you saw how he did in the playoffs last year. I still don't know if Shane Wright makes the roster, which is going to be very interesting because unless he gets special, as far as I understand it, and as far as other people understand it, is unless he gets special permission, he cannot play the season in the AHL because he doesn't meet the criteria for a player to be playing in the AHL at his age. And that has to do with the fact that there was no season due to COVID in the OHL, which will be interesting to see if they, and also like, it will be interesting to see how they kind of set everything up and if they give him that exception. But I think that Ty Cartier has a real chance because he can play wing, because he can play center. Shane Wright, you have to play him at center. So it's a little bit more restrictive.
Yeah, he'll have a spot there. I mean, otherwise, I don't know if there's a lot of spots in the forward group to break in. If it's Wright doesn't make the team there, that's probably where your spot is. All right, now prospect to watch overall in the system. So just anywhere in that's playing right now.
I mean, the biggest question mark or the biggest prospect that players or that fans should be watching is Lucas Dragicevic out of Tri-City, because this is a guy who had first round pedigree and didn't go in the first round. He was a top 60 pick, but I think it was a lot of people were surprised that he dropped as far as he did, and now it's up to him to show that the other 31 teams made a mistake, or 30, because Tampa Bay doesn't have any picks ever. But he's playing close to Seattle in Tri-City. He's one of the most exciting players in the WHL. Like, this is a guy who could hit maybe 90 points as a defenseman in the WHL, which doesn't happen very often. But he needs to work on his defense. He needs to work on his footwork. He needs to round out his game. So if he can take that next step, then I think you have basically a steal when it comes to it. And then one other player I want to mention that Kraken fans should go and check out is Caden Hamill down in Everett. Talk to people in Everett. They're really excited about him. He came over in the Olin Zellweger trade, massive trade at the WHL deadline. He's going to be their number one defenseman. So, and that was a late round pick, 5th round pick. So that is a guy that I would definitely keep tabs on. He's not going to put up, 80, 90 points, but that's a real solid defenseman that has an opportunity to surprise some people.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on those guys. It's always fun to watch prospects throughout the year, so definitely check those guys out. All right, now this one could be it could change from last season. Who knows? Who will lead the team in scoring at forwards and defense?
Well, I think at defense, the answer is Vince Dunn. And I think that if he doesn't lead, there will be some questions, because he was signed to lead the team in points from defense. He had 64, and Justin Schultz had 34 last year. So 30-point difference. If he drops below 64 points, I think there will be a little bit of a problem going on. But I have faith that he'll once again lead. And as for the points leader, it's going to be tough. It's going to be between Matty Beniers, Jordan Eberle, or Jared McCann. Right now, I would probably give the edge to Matty Beniers, because I think he's going to get more opportunities. Like, you're going to see him play even more next year. But don't discount Jordan Eberle. I think that's your sleeper. If you're talking about fantasy hockey or players to watch, Jordan Eberle is one of those guys that he just consistently produces. He is a leader on this team, and I'm excited to see what he can do this season.
Yeah, Eberle's always been good. I don't know if he's had a bad season anywhere. So,
and he's closing in on 1,000 games. So it's crazy to think that this World Junior hero all those years ago is already at almost at the 1,000 game mark.
Right. That's it. It doesn't seem like he's 33 years old, actually, although he has been around for a while.
Yeah.
All right. Trades. So pick one player that could be traded before the deadline. We talked about some goaltenders. It's probably one of those.
Yeah, I think it's Chris Driedger in the end. I know that Edmonton had the report was that Edmonton had interest, and then they went out and got Jack Campbell, which, this hasn't seemed to have been worked out too well for them so far. But luckily, Stuart Skinner's coming up. I could see Chris Driedger going to a team that maybe has a younger goaltender, and they need kind of a veteran presence there, or even at the deadline, maybe if the Kraken can retain some money on his deal, going somewhere, or if a goaltender goes down. But I think that the Kraken are in a situation where they might have to deal him before they want to, as in they might have to deal him before the regular season starts, when they'd probably rather hold on to him. But I think if you're looking at potential player who's going to be traded, it is Chris Driedger.
We'll see when that happens. I think it probably would be before the season starts, because I don't know if they want to be holding 3 goaltenders for long term, right? Okay, final question. This is always fun. A bold prediction or a hot take for this season?
Well, I kind of want to make mine that the Kraken are going to name Yanni Gourde the captain. I don't know if that's a hot take. It seems to be what the general fan consensus is, but there is talk, like, do you make Matty Beniers the captain, or do you give Yanni Gourde that opportunity, let Matty Beniers, get settled in the NHL, more than he's already settled, but
Yeah.
give him some years. I saw like, a report or people talking about, is Connor Bedard going to be the captain in Chicago? And I'm thinking like, let rookies be rookies. Let them, play a couple of years before you slap all that responsibility on them. But Yanni Gourde just feels like the perfect captain. I think that him or Jordan Eberle, but I feel like Yanni Gourde is kind of more in that captain material. Fans love him. He's like one of the heartbeats of this team, and I think that would be just a great opportunity to see him, knowing how he came up undrafted, had to work his way up through the Tampa system, becoming such a key player. It would just be kind of the tip of his cap to get the C on his jersey this season.
I like that one. I never thought Gourde but he's definitely very, very valuable leader in Seattle. And so, yeah, I do agree. He could be captain for sure. Eberle would be a good choice as well, because he's similar type of guy too. All right. Well, thanks, Adam, for coming on the show and previewing the Seattle Kraken season coming up. Before we get going, give everyone your social media where everyone can follow you.
Yeah. So I am on what is it called now? X. Yes. And so if you want to follow me, it's at Adam Kierszenblat on X. There you can find a lot of WHL stuff, a lot of Kraken and Canucks stuff. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting season, and hopefully one that Kraken fans will remember, or one that will hopefully build off of the excitement of last year.
Yeah, hopefully. Like I say, they have a really solid team going into the season again. I think they're going to be right in the mix with the playoff team. So being another exciting season in Seattle, I think. All right. There's another season preview in the books. Make sure you're following all the writers at thehockeywriters.com. Adam, I believe you're the only Seattle Kraken writer now. So we got the coverage right here. Make sure you're following him and his writing all throughout the season. Also, give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and yeah, keep following us here. We're going to keep pumping out these season previews until the season starts, and we're going to keep having these roundtables throughout the season as well. So until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable.